I try to do something that is at first true to force through the modern game AI in my perspective, how I see it. And then, am I too loud?
No, it's perfect.
Yeah, okay. And then I try to speak about a little bit about an application of game AI algorithm as far as I can see it in chemistry. I told Fernando in the morning already that it was, so to say, not my fault that these things are going to happen in chemistry. So the chemists Googled me, and for some reason I was the only guy in Münster who was doing game AI, or who was telling people that he was doing game AI. So they came to me and we did something together, which is quite successful. But before I can talk about that, you see, I have some other topics I have to explain. So we come to that in, let's say, 20 minutes or so. Maybe I use a clock.
Relax, Mike. You are below equator. Yes. But he will be educated.
Just for me to keep the overview. A lot of timing. Okay, what is modern game AI? I think there have been some things that have changed in the last years. There was a very controversial statement from Alex Champander. Maybe you know the name, maybe you don't. He is one of the guys who worked in both worlds. He worked in game industry, he worked in academia doing game AI. And at a conference 4 years ago, he told people that he expected that the next giant leap of game AI is actually artificial intelligence. So that means that in some or the other way, we can say that game AI before was not really intelligent. And I will try to explain that a little bit in the next minutes. From the experiences of yesterday, I added another comment that was made by Ken de Young in the summer. I talked to him in Berlin at the Gecko conference, and I asked him, what do you think, what should we do in the next years, what kind of research in CI would be important? And he said, well, it's now time to apply our methods. And this is true in this talk for several reasons, because actually I will show that we can apply for instance, game AI methods, also CI methods, there's a certain overlap, you will see, to real problems, and it actually makes sense for areas where we haven't expected before that it would help. So these two statements as a start. Now I would like to talk about the classical view of game AI. So if you would have talked to a game AI guy in industry, or you can do also now, but things are changing a bit at the moment. But if you would have talked to a game AI in industry about 5 years ago, he would say, well, we have the methods. We just look them up. It's all done. We have computer science textbooks, so it's there. So basically that's finite state machines, hierarchical finite state machines, scripting, that's it. So we don't need any more. Then, of course, there were some other methods that have been used from time to time, like cellular automata, inference maps, some optimization approaches, greedy usually, so gradient search, something like that, game theory. But things have been changed, or things have changed a lot in the last years, and that had mainly to do with the things we are trying to resolve within game AI. And well, the field is much, much wider now, because we used to resolve only NPC behavior, non-player character behavior. That was everything they did in the industry. So they controlled figures that played against the human, so to say, or with the human. And these had to be controlled somehow. That's all they did. Nowadays, we have much more than that. So we treat basically a number of aspects of games that wouldn't have been seen as game AI before. For instance, we also do procedural content generation. I will not really speak about that. There are so many things I could talk about now that it will fill hours probably, so I will constrain to the most important things. But the basic influences nowadays of game AI methods are threefold. We have, let's say, specific algorithms. They come from something like pathfinding, for example. We have classic AI and machine learning techniques. And we have also computational intelligence methods. And all these mix up now more and more. It's not that separated anymore. Even on the conferences, there's a CI and games conference. We have a lot of different approaches we use now. So we are absolutely oriented at solving the task and not about, let's say, using a specific method. So what is new in game AI is also that we not only deal with what is happening in the game while it is running, but also what is happening before the game is actually deployed, when we build the game, so to say. So during design, there are a lot of specific things that have to be done. One is procedural content generation, for example. There's also the balancing problem. There are many more. And these are also dealt with in game design, in game AI nowadays. So my personal view is like that. It's a bit a subjective matter. One can add more methods. Just to explain short, the top is game AI, then there's two different things within the game, that is control, then before the game is actually deployed, that is design support, can it be called. And in control we have things like the NPC behavior, that's basically what we had before. Then we have supportive AI and strategic behavior, that is bots. A part of that we also had before. You may have heard of the successes of AlphaGo, for example. So actually computer programs playing against humans and winning in very complex games. So that would be something like strategic behavior. Then there's also directors. I don't have time to explain in large. From some games, for example, Left 4 Dead, it is known that people use a specific component that controls how much action is going to happen and adjusts that to what the user needs, so to say. So actually, the game tries to measure how satisfied the user is during the run of the game. And let's say if the user is getting bored, then it provides more action. If the user is stressed, then it provides less action. Things like that. That is doing it. That is what a directed component is doing. Then we have design support, as I said, balancing and PCG, procedural content generation. And especially procedural content generation is a very interesting and important area, because that means that we don't have to have something like for Grand Theft Auto, for example, we had about 500 people setting up the content for a game, and they did so, I think, for 3 to 4 years. So a huge amount of human work went into that, and of course, industry would like to have that faster and cheaper. So every possible support by game AI is appreciated, and that's a direction that is very dynamic at the moment. To give you an impression, I think as I'm doing a game AI talk, I have to show at least one video. So I selected one that is quite famous. Let's say the game is quite famous. It's from No Man's Sky, so this is not my video, it's not my game. But it's a game that has been expected for more than 2 years, because almost everything in the game has been procedural content generated. Let's see if it works. You can also look it up on YouTube, for example. They are also on the Hello Games website. So it looks about this. And everything you see here, well, basically what you see here is somebody exploring one planet. So the game is about a huge amount of planets you can explore. You can even take your airship, spaceship, and let's say move it to another planet and explore that one. And everything you see here is completely individually generated for that one planet. So it's a complete ecosystem. There's trees, for example, plants. There's a number of animals. So on a different planet, you can approach. It's looking completely differently. The thing is, the game has been heavily expected, and then people, let's say, when they saw it, they were a bit disappointed, because it has an effect that is A little bit like if you play Sims, there's no really a goal in the game. So you can explore what you want, you can build what you want. There are so many choices, so many possibilities. You can always do something new, but there's not an end state. So you don't get a reward and that's it, you're done, you won the game. So that's one of the problems you have to deal with if you make everything new. Whoosh, out of the video. That was just an example of what PCG is doing at the moment, or what you can do with PCG if you use it. Well, in most of the games, we do much smaller things with PCG, like just evolving turns, strategy maps, what you want. But if you are interested in knowing a bit more and getting a bit, let's say, a wider view of what game AI is dealing with at the moment, for a long time there was not really a book on that matter, at least not on what I consider as modern game AI. So now there's a book that is going to come, and where the two authors are friends of mine, Yoris Yanakakis and Julian Togeris. So this is the rough content. Games and AI explained why we use AI in games, for example, different methods. Then the topics are playing games, generating content, modeling players. Most of that I will not speak today, but if you're interested in the methods, you can look that up. So interestingly, they have a deal with a Springer publisher, so that one will stay under this address and it will be free and openly available. Although you can also, from next year on, you can buy it as a book, but you can also always download the PDF and look at it. So it's completely free. So as I said, what is new? We have much more things, or many more things we do in game AI now, and we have many more new algorithms. For example, Monte Carlo tree search, and that is something I will explain in more detail in the let's say half an hour to come. We also have deep learning, but I'm not really an expert on deep learning. I think there are people here that have more experience in deep learning, so I'd rather concentrate on the Monte Carlo tree search part. To give you an overview of how the authors, let's say, see the world in game AI, this is only a partial overview, it's not complete, but these are the things that are done in game AI at the moment. There's, for example, player modeling, there's search and planning, so search and planning is rather traditional things, so to say. Then there's procedural content generation, computational narrative, that is also a very interesting field at the moment, basically deals with with natural language human interaction, so to say. There was a big research program in the US about computational narrative, and there are a lot of very interesting results there. But I want also to talk about that, just for you to know, if you're interested. Then there's NPC behavior learning and believable agents. So there's more, but it didn't fit into the picture. So why am I standing here? Because I'm actually somebody who comes from a CI background. I learned evolution computation for a number of years. I did my PhD in evolution computation. So why do I apply that stuff to game AI? Well, the reason is that we have real-time conditions often, and we have problems that are usually too complex to even know if we have the optimum. And most of the time we don't even need the optimum, we just need a good solution. And under these conditions, for instance, you can apply something like evolution computation, because you need fast and good approximations. You don't know what the optimal solution is, and you don't even have time to look for it. To give you an example, like this, if you program the opponent component, so the computer player, so to say, for an RTS game, the human just plays on. You cannot optimize your strategy for 5 minutes, because then the human has already won, more or less. So you have to be really, really quick. And methods like evolution computation, that also holds true for MCTS, still work, even under real-time conditions. They are not optimal, but they work, and that's what we need here in this context. Actually, we have established a field in the last years. I would say it really started about 2005, when the conference was first issued, the Computational Intelligence and Games Conference. About the same time, I think the Americans started the AID conference, which is relatively similar to our conference. It's a bit more of a traditional AI conference, but it's also very much focused on games. So we established different tracks at the different conferences. For example, I am usually going to the Gecko conference, where we also established a track that deals with games and things like that. Nowadays, there are many conferences, and most of the large conferences, even in computer graphics and so on, have tracks that deal with games. So you can, if you have something to submit a paper, you can freely choose where to submit that. We had 3 Darkstudent seminars, or basically we had already 2. The third one is coming up in 2 weeks. And these have been very important. I will give you, in the later part of the talk, I will give you an example for what we achieved there. But this panoramic view you have already seen came out of the first Darkstudent seminar in 2012, and the book is finally also a product of the Darkstudent seminar in 2012, where people at first thought about what do we actually do, what belongs, or what techniques belong to game AI, and what do we want to do, what problems do we want to resolve. Yeah, Pablo already said it. Next year and the year after, we are going to rename the field and the conference and the journal a bit, because we finally see that we have so many different influences and approaches in the CI and Games conference that it doesn't really matter anymore if it's CI or not. So we are going to rename that with advertisement for the conference next year is already out, so we can do that only in 2019. And from 2019 on, the conference is just named IEEE Conference on Games. And we presume that we will get many more submissions. So already for next year, people, to give you a comparison, usually we have around 100 people at the conference. For next year, people aim for something like 200. We will see how that turns out. And the journal is going to be renamed from January on, when also the editorship changes to Julian Tobias. So this is the advertisement. Actually, the general chair is Mark Wienans, and I told him that I'm here to give a Game AI talk on a conference that has nothing to do with games, so, and that it's really far away. So the conference is in Europe. You can, of course, submit something. He told me that if there comes even one submission out of this room, that's already a success, so we will see what happens. Feel free to try it. It is a good conference, I would say, usually about 100 people. It's relatively open to a number of different topics. So I cut a bit here so that you can't see the whole poster. But the submission is in March. For abstract, so we have an abstract submission, like you have to first hand in a very short abstract and then the paper 2 weeks later on, like Gecko does, for example. Okay, then a bit more general about AI hype and machine learning renaissance. I had this same, well, slightly changed, but almost the same slide in a talk from in front of journalists, because I don't know if you know, but especially in Germany, the journalists have huge problems at the moment because many people think that what they write is all wrong, so they try to establish, let's say, a good image, and they try to understand what is game AI or what is AI going to do with them. Is everything changeable? Is everybody manipulated on the internet, for example, by automatic bots, things like that? So that was the topic of the talk. So basically, my opinion is that we have made huge steps in the last years by means of, for example, deep learning and things like that. But it's not that we have already everything need in place. For example, we also have new game tree algorithms like Monte Carlo tree search, but of course what they can do is limited. So by no means we yet have a completely, let's say, self-determined AI that can do everything and can manipulate everybody. I mean, we don't know what is going to come in the next years, but we are not there. To give you an example, that this is not really all intelligent what we can do at the moment. The boss of Facebook, you probably know him, tried to implement a smart home AI. He called it Jarvis. That was in December 2016 when he gave a statement. According to what I read, he used up some spare time from time to time during the year 2016 to make an AI that can take a number of or can do a number of things in his smart home and make it more intelligent, so to say. And what came out is the statement that basically whatever he did is using a very advanced method of pattern recognition. So by no means this is intelligent. I mean, this is good that we have it, but that alone is not intelligent. There's much, much more we need for that. So, as he says, taking these ideas from one domain to another and resolve something completely different, something that we are going to coin the term general AI at the moment. These people at DeepMind do that. That is still going to come. Presumably, but we are not there. Okay, to give you an idea of, for ones of you who haven't seen so much of deep learning methods, but as I said, I'm only a user. I wouldn't say that I don't have a clue about deep learning, but I'm not by no means an expert. So, but this is a recent work of some, I think, American researchers, where they showed that it's quite easy to manipulate, for example, pictures that are photographs in a way that they look as if they would have been painted by a specific painter, or to change horses to look like zebras, or the other way around. You can do a lot of things nowadays, but that doesn't always work. So this picture I found especially funny. They document that themselves on the webpage. That's a stupid mistake the method did, and I think every human would instantly have said, oh, well, that's not right. Obviously, there's two things. There's a horse and there's a man, and it doesn't belong together. It's not a complete zebra. So obviously there are problems. It doesn't always work. There's always things that remain. In game AI, we have since last year, an interesting competition set up that basically does the same as this well-known Atari papers from the Google DeepMind people did. They basically learned with a deep network, a deep neural network, they learned from the pixel input how to move the controllers, so how to play the game. And they had quite a good success. I think about half of the games of the existing Atari games, they resolved quite well, some of them even better than some humans can do. Interesting example for a game that doesn't work, I don't know if you know it, but the game is named Pitfall. I myself played it 20 years ago, and the game is about, it's running through a jungle, and whatever you do, you have problems. So you're getting no reward, no positive reward. You can only avoid falling into something or getting hit by something, so that's your job. And when they played that with a deep neural network, that played the other games well, the player or the deep neural network decided that the player should just stand there at the starting point and wait, and do nothing. Because that was the only way to prevent losing the game. So that was the best it could do. The reward would have come only 7 screens later, when you finally finished the level. And that was so far that the neural network couldn't see that there was a reward at some point. So it just gave up and stood there. So it doesn't always work. But nowadays we have even competitions for normal game AI people, so to say, based on the game Doom, which is, I think, from the 80s, if I remember correctly. And because the code is so old and computers are nowadays so fast, they can play that up to frame rates of 7,000 frames per second. So they can play it really, really quick. That means that you can learn much, much faster than if you would take a modern game, for example. Obviously, it's possible to do to learn a controller directly without anything in between, just for pixel input. But it sometimes happens that the controllers, for example, try to shoot down health packages or things like that, or to grab enemies because they think they are health packages. So, by the way, this is so to say what the machine sees, at least where the whole picture is split into different layers. So that's somehow what the machine sees in order to learn how to play the game. So we can do cool things. Probably all of you have heard of AlphaGo. AlphaGo, first, when I was running my game lecture 2 years ago, the students were really excited that AlphaGo was playing and winning against the European champion of Go, who is not considered as a very good player. I mean, in terms of World Championship Go, let's say quality. Then it went on and finally has beaten the player who is considered as the world best player. And now you may have heard it some weeks ago. There was a major paper coming out where they did the same, but just much better and without any human input. So they just learned everything by itself, so to say. The AlphaGo Zero just plays against itself and it learns the same and better than AlphaGo did before. But how does it work? Just roughly, there's again deep learning involved. There are different neural networks they use for different things, and there's Monte Carlo tree search, and we will deal with the Monte Carlo tree search part a bit. And there's, in their version at least, a huge amount of hardware involved for training the network, and some months I think they used up for training the network. So there's really a lot of computational power they used. Of course, it's getting better now. Yeah, how does it work? To explain how it works, or how Monte Carlo tree search works, we have to have a rough idea about game tree learning. But there's a standard method, it's called min-max tree search, and of course it's for two-player games like Go or chess. And the idea is quite easy. We have two players, one is max, one is min. We have some function that is able to evaluate the game state. So if it's positive, it's good for max. If it's negative, it's good for min. And max always wants to choose the best possible move, so to say, and it achieves a winning strategy if it finds a move where min can play anything, and whatever it plays, max wins. And the other way around for min, of course. So in the game of tic-tac-toe, you can see it like this, for example, but tic-tac-toe maybe not such a good example because you can actually enumerate it quite easily. I think it has less than 400,000 states, so it's possible to just completely enumerate and find out what to play. If you see it in a game tree version, so to say, this is the, let's say, reward if we think from the max perspective. Then max will always choose the best ones. So the red ones here, the red layers are when max does a move and has to think about the best possible move. The blue layers here are the min layers, and min will always choose the worst possible move, so to say, for max. So min chooses always the minimum possible, and max chooses always the maximum possible. And what can we do with that? I don't want to talk in length about game trees, but basically the method is quite restricted to games that on the one hand have perfect information, on the other hand are deterministic. So that is something I leave out, methods like alphabetical pruning and things like that speed up things a little bit, but basically the same thing remains. We cannot deal with the game if we don't have perfect information, because then we don't have a status, we cannot evaluate. we don't know what it's worth, so to say. You cannot think for very long. After 40 milliseconds, you have to deliver a move, or you're done. Then no move happens. That is something we can establish with Monte Carlo tree search. Basically, we need only the game rules to apply it, so we don't even need any evaluation function. We just need to know we have won or we have lost. This is not sufficient in all cases because that requires that we can play the game through until the end. And you can imagine that there are games that can take very long. Would have very, very long tree, so that doesn't really work in all situations. If you encounter really hard real-time conditions, or you cannot, for whatsoever reason, run down to the end of the game, you need a heuristic function that at least hints you to more successful moves or less successful moves. With that, you can also resolve these situations then. Okay, Monte Carlo tree search depends on two things, basically, or employs two different methods. One is decision-making with uncertain knowledge. This relates to the multi-arm bandit problem. It's a well-known problem in computer science. And you can have noisy reward signal. You have to decide which arm to pull, and you want to pull the arm that is, let's say, gives you the most reward. At least you want to minimize regret. That means the expected loss due to not picking the best arm should be minimized. So you want to pick a good arm, and for that you need to accumulate some knowledge. So the other thing that we need is random simulations. We will see how that fits together later on. So this is Monte Carlo, by the way. This is a casino, probably Monte Carlo. There are different attempts on how to aggregate, let's say, random simulations somehow. Whatever you approach or whatever your strategy is, you have to be somewhat a mixture between exploitation and exploration. So, of course, if you have run into, let's say, a strategy or move that is apparently good, you want to use that knowledge, but you don't want to rule out other possibilities completely. So you have to somehow make a compromise between these two. And that's, well, there are different strategies for that. You can apply this epsilon greedy, and you can also apply something like the upper confidence bound. And I put in a formula here. I read a book by Stephen Hawking 20 years ago or so, where he said his publisher has told him he shouldn't put any formula in because every formula costs him half of the readership. So half of the people would stop reading would work. In our situation, it's probably the other way around. So I have to put in some equation so to make sure that we are doing serious things here. So, but the equation is very simple. It just has two basic components. We have an average of rewards for a specific action taken from a specific state. That's this one here. That's, so to say, our knowledge we want to exploit. And then we have a component that balances how often we have visited that tree or that part of the tree. So there's just the number of visits and the number of visits in that part of the tree when we have picked that specific action A. So that's all. And these two are somehow balanced, and now don't ask me how they get to this square root of 2, where everybody uses it. It works. I don't know if there's a theoretical explanation. You have to set some constant, and this one is in the literature. But you can of course change it. You can also take it as a parameter, especially in the work I am going to present later on. We also use it as a parameter. You can change the behavior of the algorithm a bit because you're making it more exploitive or more explorative, as you like. Okay, then we have almost everything we need for setting up the whole algorithm, and the whole algorithm is very simple. It is just 4 steps. It's selection, expansion, simulation, backpropagation. Well, selection just means we select a promising node. So let's say we start here, so we have already visited some part of the tree. We select one, so we just follow the path of the, let's say, best node. And let's say the first number is successful, so to say, moves, and the last number, the second number, is the visit count. Then we will go down this path, following the UCP1 rule, and we go there. Then expansion means we just add a new leaf. So we know there are a number of possible actions we can take at this state, and we just randomly add one. It doesn't matter which one, because we can add more later on. Then we are here, we have added a new state, and we just do a simulation until the end of the game, if it runs well, if that is possible under the circumstances. So if it works well, we have the information that if we do some random actions from this state on, we either lose or win. And from this information, believe it or not, we can infer about the most successful moves we can do. Well, it sounds strange at the beginning, but it works. It works much better than one would expect. So, as I said, we do a simulation, and then we just push when this example we have lost, I think. Yeah, we have lost. So we just push the whole information upwards again and update all the nodes above us, so that we now have 3 wins for 4 visits here, where we had 3 wins for 3 visits here. So that's basically it. That's the whole algorithm. And we can, of course, enhance it with many different methods. But this is the big picture, or the even bigger picture. You will see that very often if you, let's say, look that up on Wikipedia or in one of the publications, one of the maybe most well-known or best starting points, if you are really interested in the method, is the survey here. It's getting old. 5 years is already sort of old, but it really explains it well. And there are already quite a number of different variants in. Okay, what can we solve with Monte Carlo research? Basically everything. That's good. So before we had to restrict ourselves to games that have perfect information and that are deterministic, we don't need that anymore, so we can apply it to everything. So we can also apply it to problems in chemistry. That's the interesting part. I mean, at least for me, because the chemists in Münster just Googled who is doing game AI, and they came up with my name, and the guy called me, and we made an appointment and talked about it. They had the very rough idea that we could somehow approach their problem, molecular retrosynthesis, with MCTS. They didn't know exactly how, so we had sat together and worked it out, how it works. Both problems share a lot of different things, or a lot of properties. They have quite a high branching factor. In chemistry, the trees are much wider than deep, but still there's a high branching factor. We don't even know the sequence length. That's like playing a game. We don't know how many moves we will need until we finally arrive at the win. And the tree is much, much too large to be enumerated completely. So that's no possible approach. So this is a very recent post by somebody who interviewed Marvin Segler. Marvin Segler is the guy, the chemist, who did it. And where he wrote, the journalist wrote, algorithm model on Google's AlphaGo beats chemists at their own game. Which is, okay, you can make up your mind yourself. But the truth is, we use a part of the stuff that they did in AlphaGo, and it works well for chemistry. So what is the problem at all? What is molecular retrosynthesis? I hope I even pronounce it right. As I said, I'm not a chemist, so don't expect me to explain all these formulas to you. Well, I can partly remember what type of molecules these are, but think of a substance that is well known. Somebody else, let's say, detected it, and then the industry goes ahead and wants to really produce it, not in a very small amount, but in an industrial amount. So they need, let's say, materials or basic materials, starting points that are available. And that's the important step. So we, of course, we could think of very, very complex molecules, put them together, but what we want to do is we want to do it with the molecules we have in the lab, or we can go to a chemical supplier and just ask for the molecules. So there are catalogs, I think there are about 3,000 substances that are very easy to get. You just call the guy and they supply to you. There are probably more you can get. And what we want now is we want to make these very complex molecules out of very simple ones we have. That's the problem. So it can look like this here. That's an example. So this would be the target. And now we think backwards, so to say. We just apply reactions backwards until we end up with molecules we actually have. So the molecules we actually have, I don't know if you can recognize, this is red here. Can you see that? Yeah, roughly, this is red, this is not red here. This is red again, this is red, and this is red. So we have some things in store, and we want to finally break down the whole molecule until we can apply reactions we already know that work with the molecules we already have in store. So at the end, we arrive at a terminal state, a solved state, D in this case, and D uses only these molecules, this one, and this one, because we do a separation here into these two, and this one can be separated further into these two. So with these three molecules, we can make this one. And this is finally what we want to have. But now we have to get a lot of information. So, for example, we need to encode the molecules. We need to encode reaction rules. We have to find out which reactions actually exist so that we can apply them. And then we need, let's say, something like a preference, because there are so many reactions you can apply to any module or molecule that the tree would be far too large. So we need a preference that tells us for these two molecules apply this reaction. This is the most likely one. Okay, for 1 and 2 the chemists already have their tools, so they can describe molecules, reactions and things like that. For 3 was obtain the existing reaction rules. There has been a manual attempt, so as far as I've been told, the people have been, people means something like, I think, 20 PhD students somewhere in Great Britain, have been working for around 5 years and have went through the whole catalog of existing reactions at that time. The only problem is that it doesn't scale, because chemical information is growing so quickly that basically the chemical knowledge doubles every decade. So next decade you can set another 20 people for 5 years to, let's say, categorize reactions. You can't do that, of course. Currently we have around 11 million reactions that are in this famous Reaxys database the chemists use. And actually Marvin has applied deep learning in order to sort of deep learning to break down the existing reactions to some, let's say, template reactions, and then we end up with around 300,000 different rules for reactions. But if you now think about a tree with a depth of something like 5 to 20 steps, that is the steps we need to actually put a molecule together, and a branching factor of around 46,000, because that's the average number of reactions you can apply to a molecule. Then we end up with even for 5 steps, we end up with a number of possibilities that needs 23 digits to write it up, which is far too large to apply any kind of research here, as you can presume. So we have to get the branching factor down somehow. That's not possible in that way. So this is where, again, deep learning comes into play. And what the chemists did is basically they learned a preference from out of these 300,000 possible reactions of the 50, for each molecule of the 50 most preferable ones. And with the 50 most preferable ones, we already have quite a good coverage of the whole root set. The whole root set of 300,000 roots explains about, let's say, 4/5 of the whole chemistry, and what we can explain with our top 50 accuracy. So the 50 most preferable reactions for a molecule is at least 73%. So that's already quite near. We don't have to search much further. So we have a branching factor of 50, and 50 already sounds much better than 46,000 or something like that. Still, it's some amount of work. So you can see how that works here. We have a deep neural network, and basically learns for each molecule what the most probable reaction rules are. And then we only use these most probable 50 reaction rules in the next steps. So if we put everything together in Monte Carlo tree search like application, we have the 4 steps as before, and basically all the knowledge comes in here when the expansion procedure happens. So when we make up a new node, and a new node means that we apply a reaction, so we separate something into 2 components. So we have different neural networks here. We have this expansion policy network, that's the one I just explained, this one here with the 50 most preferable reactions in that situation. And then we need something like, the chemists call it in-scope filter, that can check if a reaction is chemically possible at all, given now the concrete molecules and the reaction, if it will work or not. This is also learned with a different deep learning network, a deep neural network, and it has quite a good accuracy, and I would say okay accuracy. The thing is, it's difficult to train that thing because in publications of chemists there are the positive cases, the reactions that actually work. So we don't have the negative cases, reactions that don't work. So what we did, we made up these things by our own, so to say. We just perturbed the existing, permuted the existing reactions a bit, and then we came up with a number of negative examples. And from that we learned if reactions can actually happen or not with quite a high confidence level. So the error rates are 1.5% for false positives and something like 14% for false negatives, I think. Okay, yeah, as I said, we have 2 networks. Basically, we would be okay with 2 networks, but then it would still be very slow. So we have, for the random rollouts, we have a downgraded version of our first network. It is about factor 10 faster, and we just put in much less knowledge. So we downgraded the number of available reactions from 300,000 to something like 30,000, I think. So it's much smaller, much faster. And of course, we don't exactly know beforehand how many steps we will need. So we applied a maximum number of steps. I think that's 20. So if we are not done with 20, then that's it, and we cannot solve it. Yeah, and the in-scope filter network I already explained a bit. Does it work? Yeah, it works very well, and it is really fast compared to what the chemists had before. So actually, these 2 lines here are new, because basically this is Monte Carlo tree search with our deep learning or trained deep learning networks. And this is best first search, again with the same networks. So we have established this trained network, so we can use them for other purposes. And if we use them just with the best first search, we end up here. So you will see that, you would see if we would have much more time, then probably these 3 will meet at some point. So the red one is what the chemists could do before. So the heuristic they had before is a manually, let's say, built heuristic, and you can see that you need quite an amount of time before you reach 1 minute. You cannot solve anything, basically, and then it slowly but surely gets up. I don't know exactly where the, let's say, the break-even point is here. It somewhere merges into one line, but it can be very far in the future. We don't know exactly. So for all, let's say, conceivable experiment lengths, we are much better than everything they had before. And obviously, there are people who like that. That thing I just got on Monday, I think. So Marvin and, well, I'm also on it here. Marvin got a certificate from Chemical Information Modeling Journal because he presented that stuff at a conference and it won the best paper. Basically, that's the best paper award because chemists don't have papers in the conference, they have posters. So that's basically the best paper award for this conference. And something that is true, I want to emphasize that actually we are a multidisciplinary team, and I think that's very important because the chemists have the knowledge. As you can say, I'm almost not able to explain what the different molecules are about, but I can explain you the method. And the chemists knew about the method, but they don't really know how to apply it, so we worked that out together. And together it is a very successful path, I would say. Okay, another thing. Oh, I'm almost done, so I will need about 5 minutes or so. I told you in the beginning already that we have something like the GBGAI. Basically, that also came out of the first Darkstuhl. That is basically the idea that we want to have a general game AI. And if you nowadays listen to a DeepMind talk, people will tell you they want to have general intelligence. I saw one of these talks at the Gecko conference in summer, and the first slide was, we are DeepMind, we want to resolve intelligence. So that's a vision, I would say, that's a task. Here it's a bit smaller. What we want to have is an AI that can actually play many different games without being actually programmed to play different games. So nowadays, what people do is basically this. They develop AIs for different games. We want to have an AI that can somehow learn to play different games so that we don't have to reprogram it. And that actually works. But the thing they established at the Darkstuhl meeting was the general video game playing language, or the general video game playing. Maybe you know that something like general game playing already exists since about 15 years, I think, where they actually deal with a restricted set of problems. There are certain things they can't deal with, like non-determinism and things like that. So this is much more open. There are some important publications, and there's a web address where you can see what the current status is. It's sort of a series of competitions, I would say, but actually there are so many things happening at the moment. Because we started for some years with a one-player competition, and nowadays we just added a two-player competition and a learning track. Where you will ask yourself, how can it work that you can actually play games where you don't even know what the rules are? And it works by adding a forward model. So forward model is basically a simulation of a step. So and you can already make the connection probably. If you have a forward model and you can find out what is going to happen, at least with some probability, if I do this action, then you can apply something like Monte Carlo tree search, for example. And that's what people actually do. So most of the important controllers, or most of the successful controllers, actually apply Monte Carlo tree search in one or the other way. The learning thing is much more difficult. In the learning thing, then you have no forward model, which is a completely different problem. But if you have a forward model, then let's say the best controllers can achieve something like around 50% of the games successfully played. Again, without actually knowing what the game is about. So I can give you some examples. Don't know why these. Oops, where's my mouse? Don't know where the funny pictures come from, but these are 3 games, just as an idea of what it's about. These are simple games. There's an avatar, and the infection game has to reach a number of different, let's say, items in order to color them all. And I think the blue things are opponents. They color the target's back. so you have to be quicker than the blue opponents. Missile Command is a game that is quite well known. It ends you quickly because you have lost if some missile hits the Earth. And the third one you already know, of course. That's Pac-Man. It's something most of the people know, and actually you cannot encode that with a traditional general game playing. At least not the variant we usually use because it's non-deterministic. This Pac-Man is non-deterministic. So when you cannot learn where the ghosts will go, you have to, let's say, simulate somehow. That's what people do actually. First time we heard the music here. Okay, so these are the descriptions of the games. As you can see, they are very, very simple. So it's just one page of text usually that explains what is going to happen if something is hit. And these are the explanations of, well, this is another game. You can probably see it's Space Invaders. So these are the explanations or the textual description files of the levels. So we also have different levels so that we don't specialize too much on resolving only one level. And this is the sample controller. It's very, very simple. I even use it in my lectures for playing around a bit with the stuff. Basically, it's just a constructor. So this is Java constructor, and then there's only one method you have to implement, and that's the act method. You get the state observation that is basically your forward model, so you can apply your different, let's say, actions and see what comes out. And you know that you have 40 milliseconds, and in the 40 milliseconds you have to return an action. That's all you have to do. So basically that's the task. Of course, the real controllers are a bit more complex. But most of them, as said, use MCTS in one or the other way. So just an overview of what we can use modern game AI methods for. There are many things I could have talked about but didn't because there was no time. As I said, we have procedural content generation that we could use everywhere where we have to produce stuff automatically. We have computational narrative that is for natural language interaction. As I have heard, also the American military uses it, for example, for establishing something like automatic communication devices. We have game mining, that's good for finding out about different types of customers or churn prediction, for example, when is a player going to leave the game. We have behavior trees that can encode believable agent behavior, and that is, so to say, the successor of finite state machines we had in the beginning. So finite state machines are out, believable behavior trees are in. We have MCTS, so we can efficiently search large trees, and we have deep neural networks, and you heard that we can use that for basically everything where we have to model very complex interactions. So that's it. On the last slide, I have only a summary, but we can go on to the questions. Thank you.
Questions?
There's a question over there.
Oh.
I was just going to ask, one of the things is in games, you're able to simulate the environment so many times, like for example, so you're able to just simulate the environment so many times so that the computer can learn. But I was wondering in real world applications where there's basically less data that you can use, I guess, for training. If you thought that this method is there a way of trying to approach that kind of problem in real world applications or not?
You mean, if I got it right, you want to know if I can apply MCTS to real world problems?
Basically smaller data sets.
It's basically that, when you have restriction on data side.
Yeah, it depends on if you have some kind of information. I mean, a forward model is useful if you have some kind of simulation that at least explains part of the possible reactions, even if it's not deterministic. Yeah, if you have something like, maybe you have a ton of data and not some neural network, train some neural network with it, so you can at least predict approximately what is going to happen if you do this and that, then that would be useful, yes. If you have no information at all, then in reality you cannot really use it because you would have to play it through until the end. So I think that would make sense because in reality, if you have a problem like controlling a car or so,